Hello and welcome to Jazz Tonight. I'm Michael Jacobi, executive producer of Jazz on the Plazz and host of Raising the Standards on KCAT Radio. Delighted to have you as we begin our 17th year of Jazz on the Plazz, our summer of the great Chet Baker. And we'll talk more about Chet in a little while. It is our want and our habit of opening big, and this year it's no different. I'm so delighted to have an old friend, and we'll talk about all the years we've known each other, Jane Monheit. How are you, Jane?
I'm so good. How are you?
So good to see you. I spoke last night about my bucket list, which I've had for artists. Sad, I always wanted to get Blossom Dearie here, and sadly we lost her. David Frischberg I don't think he's performing anymore, but you have been on this list since I met you when you were 12.
I'm probably not much older than that.
Yeah, probably not. For the last, since we started this series, and I'm so delighted that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. Me too. I've been hearing about this series forever, especially now that I live in Los Angeles. You know, so many of the musicians down there have accompanied, all kinds of greats up here, and so I've been hearing about this for ages, and I'm really glad I'm finally here.
Do you know our friend John Prue?
Yes.
Well, John had just moved back from Michigan to Los Angeles. I said, does this man have to hire you every year? So he said, well, yeah, that's why I came back.
I love it.
Talk a little bit. You're not an LA girl, though.
No, I'm from New York.
Okay. So tell the line.
When I'm raised.
Tell the line about when you know you're a New Yorker.
I think I read this on Twitter or something. You're not really a real New Yorker until you move to LA.
That's right.
And I'm like, it really resonates. Like everybody there I know is from New York. But I grew up on Long Island and lived in Manhattan from my teens till I was about 38.
Really? Where'd you live in Manhattan?
Morningside Heights that whole time.
Okay.
I loved it up there because I went to college at Manhattan School of Music, which is up there, and the neighborhood is beautiful. Why leave?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Talk a little bit about growing up in terms of a lot of music in the house.
Yeah, it was nonstop.
What were you folks? What did they do?
Well, no one in the family are professional musicians except me, outside of a couple people on my father's side who were and are now retired, but they were in the classical world. Everybody can do something, but I'm the only one who pursued it because they all had other things that they wanted to do more, even though they all had the ability to be professionals, Okay. On my mother's side is where all the jazz comes from. And musical theater as well. And that was a huge influence on me. You can hear it in my interpretation. Right. I grew up hearing the Great American Songbook, both from original cast recordings and jazz recordings at the same time. So it was all big for me. I like original changes for that reason, that kind of thing. And then on Dad's side was bluegrass.
So it's Ella meets Judy a little bit.
Very much so, big time. It's funny, I have vocal students coming to me all the time like, well, everyone says I have too much vibrato for jazz. I'm like, have we... Let's talk. But
San Francisco.
But I'm like, believe me, it's whatever you have to offer, there's space for it. My father's side was bluegrass, so I grew up with a lot of that as well. In fact, I know I have at least one tune in the show tune in the show tonight. That's very much from that side of my life. Okay.
Let me do the usual disclaimer. Tonight isn't tonight because by the time you've seen the show, you will have sadly missed a wonderful evening, which is tonight, but it's not. But it's a long story. So did obligatory piano lessons or music?
Oh yes, my grandmother taught me piano. But honestly, in addition to everything I got at home, which was incredible, learned to read music when I learned to read words, everything. I was in public school in Long Island in the 80s and the 90s, and it was just a golden age of incredible music departments. We had jazz in elementary school. The teachers I had, I'm still friendly with now. You know what I mean? Our high school had big bands and jazz choirs and everything else. So I, arrived at Manhattan School of Music with a very solid musical theory education in jazz.
Yeah. I don't care where you folks at home are politically. The one thing that's wrong with this country is we no longer have music in schools.
It's a bummer.
And it is so wrong.
And it's really about more than just learning music. Learning music increases all kinds of other wonderful skills and mental abilities, and it's just good for us socially. It's wonderful for kids for that reason. It's not like they all need to grow up and be a singer.
Right. Particularly now, there's plenty.
There are plenty of us. There are quite enough of us.
Singers or executive producers, by the way. We've reached our limit. So was there an epiphany? Was there a moment that you were hanging around the house that did you play a lot of piano? Were you and did you write?
I did when I was younger. It's not something I really do anymore. I write lyrics for people.
Okay. But did you write poetry in high school?
Oh, in fact, my family thought I was going to become a writer for a while. Short stories, things like that. I was really into fiction writing, and I was never very good at it. But now I do some lyric writing for people. But I don't consider myself to be a songwriter, although it's a skill that I worked on and developed as part of my musical education and development. But my heart is with the Great American Songbook. I feel very driven to represent the songbook.
And your first exposure to that was a very young child?
Birth.
Probably
in the womb, seriously. The day I was born, I'm sure my mother was singing standards to me.
Now, you opened for Michael, or have worked with Michael Feinstein.
Oh, quite a bit. And have coached at his high school vocal competition, and
Who I made the mistake once of saying, no, I think the Gershwin tune you're thinking of. Oh. He goes, I know a little bit about Gershwin.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's the greatest living expert on all things Gershwin.
Well,
all things songbook
he was
in general.
Ira's protege, for heaven's sakes.
He was.
Of course he knows all that
stuff. Yes, he
was. You and I met, you were playing KRML, which is a jazz station I used to be at in Carmel, which no longer exists, which was the station that was in Play Misty for me, in Eastwood's film. And I told this story last night. Years ago, it's probably the early 2002 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And Jane was doing a show for us, a Christmas show in Monterey. And the general manager said to me, Jacobi, you're going to introduce Jane. I said, that's great. And at the last minute, he comes up to me and says, Eastwood wants to introduce Jane. And I said, tell Eastwood to introduce me. And I heard a voice from the side that said, I'll introduce Jane. And I went, okay.
That was really cool. Because my parents were backstage for that, and they lost
their minds. So I had to introduce him.
Yeah, that was really cool. But.
First gig. Singing. Were you in a rock and roll band in high school?
College. In high school, I sang at weddings. I honestly never had another job. I never even babysat. I've literally never been paid to do anything but sing or teach singing since I was in my teens.
Are you available for babysitting?
No.
Okay.
I have my hands full with one.
You won. We're going to talk about Jack after the break. Which your tattoo there
his date of birth.
Is his date of birth.
Yeah.
And I was saying before the show that it would have been a good idea to do it while you're in labor to take your mind off that, but it turned out it's not legal.
It's extremely illegal, yes.
I didn't realize that.
Tattooing during pregnancy is not cool.
You know it looks bad when the doctor's stepping around the tattoo artist. Maybe it's
not ideal.
Not a good idea. So tell me a rock and roll band name that you were in.
Oh, we were called 19 Local, which was after the subway line.
Yeah.
We only ever played one gig. At the West End, which was like the bar that everyone hung out at in my neighborhood, like downstairs. And this gig is
it's downstairs.
It was like we'd never been downstairs before. It was like, oh my God. And then I was in this other like real progressive rock band, and I can't even remember what we were called, but we played like CBGBs and Spiral and all those really famous rock clubs, Elbow Room.
Yeah.
So it was neat. Like I get to tell people I sang at CBGBs. Like that's kind of cool. Of course we had to pay to play, but I thought I was very cool 18 years old in my leather pants.
That's right. And we didn't pay that much to play. So
and I probably was, swinging while I was singing weird, rock songs in 7. But, at least I can say I did it.
My daughter's the lead singer in a punk rock band. And when I see her, she goes, come on, you know the lyrics. I go, not only don't I know the lyrics, by the way, I don't understand the lyrics. Talking to Jane Monheit, Jazz Tonight, as we open our series paying tribute to the great Chet Baker. I want to take a moment to thank our new sponsor. It's a new and an old sponsor, Willow Street. And the family of restaurants, Willow Street Pizza, of course, here in Los Gatos. You had dinner there last night?
Yes, we did.
And you loved it?
It was fantastic.
It was fantastic. And also in Willow Glen, the Willow Street Tap Room, pizza and tap room. It's like 16 beers on tap and wonderful, and 10 TVs, and it's a wonderful place to have a brew and to maybe catch a game. We'll tell you more about them throughout the year. As a matter of fact, we'll play a couple of commercials and be right back with Jane Monheit. Welcome back to Jazz Tonight. Michael Jacobi, executive producer of Jazz on the Plazz, with you as we begin our 17th season. And as I pointed out earlier and believe to this very moment, we are opening in a big and wonderful way with my friend Jane Monheit. We're talking about New York, and I threw you off, right? We're going back to a new subject. You're bi-coastal these days, obviously, because you work in New York so much.
I wouldn't call myself bi-coastal, though, because I don't live there at all.
At all?
No home in New York.
You just go in for the hotel.
I just go and work and I come home. LA is home now.
You do you do San Francisco jazz a lot?
Yes, I do, quite a bit. And I play Yoshi's a lot, too.
Yeah,
I sort of go back and forth.
And you play Time Warner, which in New York, we talked about, with Dizzy's.
Well, I normally, when I'm there, I usually end up at the Appel Room.
Okay.
But in New York...
Which is one of the great rooms in the world, folks. If you haven't seen it,
it's gorgeous.
Behind the artist is Central Park. It overlooks
Columbus Circle and the big entrance to Central Park. It's absolutely gorgeous.
So cool. Yeah.
But in New York, really, my main venue is Birdland, and always has been, always will be. Like Birdland, they are my family. Yeah. You know, I've worked tons at the Blue Note as well. I work at City Winery as well. I love the City Wineries. I tour the City Wineries quite a lot now. They're beautiful clubs. But Birdland, that is my homeland.
You gone to Hudson Yards yet?
No.
I understand it's terrific, with the big sculpture and so. I just got back, and there's a group called Duchess. I don't know if you know them.
They are dear friends of mine. Hillary Gardner's a dear friend of mine.
Good buddies. Yeah. And caught them doing a CD at Jazz Standards, which I like. I like Jazz Standards.
I've sung with them there many times. Yeah.
Well, it's it is. Is there as much work in LA for live work?
Yes, quite a bit. The scene there is growing, in my opinion. My husband obviously is one of the top call drummers in town and is working absolutely nonstop. So I have a really good look at the scene through his eyes. And it's thriving. It's wonderful. There's so many great musicians, so many young musicians. The Monk Institute's presence in town is really great too. It's a good thing right now. Lots of wonderful venues.
Is the live scene a lot larger than the recorded scene?
No. Well, not even, because it's studio music. It's all the films, it's television, it's all of that. So that is a massive part of LA musical employment.
Talk a little bit about, did you go to a new label fairly recently?
I'm not with a label,
You're not with a label. So you're doing your own stuff, you're the management group.
I formed my own label for my last album.
It's really at some point, I think 20 years ago, it was kind of like this, more good than bad, more bad than good. But now it's a control issue, I would think, primarily.
It's entirely different. Labels are struggling. So, you'll show up and it's like, okay, well, here's your very tiny budget because we're afraid to invest in you. And with that money, you need to do exactly what we tell you because we're terrified. And then the things that they want you to do aren't right for you as an artist and are never right for your audience because they're not tuned in to what the people actually want from you. They're not at the show. They don't know what people want. They're not there for the conversations after the show and like the hugs I'm giving people and we're crying together over stuff and they're telling me what means something to them and then I save that for the future and I remember to give them more of it. They're not there for any of that,
Being the Great American Songbook, which we both love, and which I firmly believe didn't end with Rodgers and Hart.
Oh, certainly not.
That it's still being expanded.
There's a volume 2 happening.
Billy Joel and on
Stevie.
and on.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Carole King.
What are there standards that you're not ready to tackle yet because of your age? Would you do Lush Life or something early?
I just started in the fall.
You know you're getting old when you feel comfortable doing Lush Life.
Honestly, I am not, I can sing that song from a lot of truth now. And that's why, and I also just started singing Sophisticated Lady because I can tell that story too. Okay. I'm in my 40s, I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. And it's really not, I know my life on the outside and the press and everything, it looks like everything's been super perfect. Oh, my husband, we've been together since we were kids and my beautiful child and I'm touring the world and everything's wonderful. But that's the surface. I've got a lot to sing about. Yeah. And I do freely and people know this. Everyone knows I'm unafraid to just go there. So
But again, when you're 25, you may say to yourself,
No, it's not time yet for a song
more
like that.
uncomfortable than sometimes seeing a white girl, sing Strange Fruit.
I would never do that as long as I lived.
So there are odd situations.
I also don't sing Summertime.
Yeah.
I don't think it's appropriate for me as a white woman to sing a song about black struggle.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, the Gershwins did not want white people singing
their song.
Porgy and Bess. There's a massive controversy going on about this right now with the European Opera Company.
Yeah.
So out of respect for the culture, I won't touch that kind of material. It is not for me. And it's hard for white people to accept when something is not for them, but we need to do it.
That's right. Tiffany Austin, I don't know if you know her, is wonderful, who's here for the second concert, has a new CD out, and she has a tune called Greenwood, which is, it's like a change is going to come. It's that powerful.
Oh, I got to check it out.
So we'll talk to her on next week's show about that.
Yeah, I got to check it out.
What lyrics, do you do the verse a lot? Because there's so many, and people don't realize, and one of the great joys of Bobby Short was Bobby would always have the verse, and it would be the lead up. And it was
he
so
knew
wonderful.
the real songs.
And then all of you go, oh, that's the song,
I love that moment.
Yeah.
And my favorite actually is if I'm singing a verse and people in the audience recognize the verse.
Yeah.
Because it almost never happens. And I'm always like, yay! I always stop and thank them in the middle of the song. But so many of these tunes, especially the Gershwin tunes, the Rogers tunes, the Porter tunes, they have a whole other section of story that we're ignoring. Why wouldn't we want to use that?
The classic Shadow of Your Smile that has the great intro.
I mean, occasionally a verse will be a little too closely related to the show that the song is from.
Because it's a setup.
It'll be a little out of context, but not for me as a little like that, although everyone ignores it and does that verse anyway. But it's almost always a good idea. And the Porter verses are full of good stuff. Crazy old references. Oh my gosh, I think the one to Just One of Those Things is really good. I love them. You can see I just got very excited about that, didn't I?
That's neat. Speaking of people that were such a big part of the 20th century, Gloria Vanderbilt, we just lost, Anderson Cooper's mom. But boy, she saw it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
From Picasso to everything else. What, and you have Jack, your son.
Yes.
That's your only son, your only child. So it's easy to pick the one you love the most. And I realize it's a little tougher with picking your favorite lyric, but give me 2 or 3 of your top lyrics.
Oh, I can tell you right now what my favorite lyric is. It's very easy. Well, I have 2. There are 2 that really stand out. Right. Ultimate favorite, Gene Lee's Turn Out the Stars, which is a Bill Evans tune. I think the lyric came a bit later. And the lyric goes, stop every comet in its magic lonely flight. I can't. I have to go cry for an hour somewhere now, thanks, because I had to think of that. And then my other one is in the English version of Corcovado. Now, I normally don't sing English versions of Visual Being tunes. I try to avoid it unless the translation is good because, like I've been saying with everything else in this interview, respecting the song, the music, the culture is super important to me. But that's a good English lyric, and the lyric is, I, who was lost and lonely, believing life was only a bitter tragic joke, have found with you the meaning of existence, oh my love.
Did you know Gene?
No. He wrote that too. He wrote that lyric too.
I knew Gene. I had dinner with him. He was on the show and I had dinner with him many times. And he wrote the lyrics to Waltz for Debbie.
Yes, he did.
Now I'm going to get flicked.
I know.
My daughter's getting married next year and they want me to officiate. Aww. Is that the word? Officiate? Whatever.
Yeah, officiate.
And I may read the lyrics to Waltz for Debbie, but I won't. I promise you I won't make it.
Oh my goodness, that's the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
We just got a couple of minutes left. I did want to mention Chet Baker, who was such a special man, and like Billie Holiday and Charlie Parker and so many jazz people, had his struggles.
Suffered.
But is kind of a rare situation, is equally well known as a musician, an instrumentalist, and a vocalist.
Yeah.
He had kind of a quirky voice, I guess you'd say.
Well, his way of singing was very informed by his instrument. Mm-hmm. And I think, that happens to anybody who does 2 things. I was a woodwind player my whole life growing up. It definitely influenced the way I approach singing. But, he sang in a very, very a way that was different than a lot of vocalists at the time, and it started to influence people and bring a slightly more instrumental sound into singing, and it was really a cool thing. I've been a lifelong fan. Yeah. There's a really interesting book actually out on the market. I think it's some of his journals.
Oh, really?
And it talks about, his drug use and stuff like that, but they're not sad or dark to read.
Well, he has very interesting Los Gatos tie-in. He played San Jose a lot. He dated a woman who was a drummer here in town, and he used to spend a lot of time in Los Gatos.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I just stumbled on that, by the way.
Yeah.
I chose Chet Baker.
And then found out.
People told me, did you know? I went, no, that's interesting.
That's like when I made my Ella record. They were like, oh, did you make it for the centennial? I was like, no, it's the centennial. Like, I literally just, uh-oh.
Are we all right? Oh, that's all right. Follow West's bulldog actually pulled part of this down when she was here once. So those
The
things,
magic
don't worry
of
about it.
television.
This is what live television's all about.
I love it.
Now I've lost my train of thought. Speaking of CDs, how many CDs do you have recorded?
10.
Okay, folks want to buy the CDs?
I don't have them with me
I
on
know.
this trip.
Yep, and the show's already aired.
Yeah. Oh, true.
That's true.
That is true.
But you can go online.
Yes, they're available everywhere.
And if someone were to buy a CD online, you'll sign it for them, right?
Certainly.
Absolutely.
I sign anything. Anyway. I've signed fishing rods. I've signed guitars. I've signed bowling balls. I've signed people's actual bodies. I will sign anything anyone brings me. It's an honor to get to sign an autograph. Are you kidding me?
Well, a couple of Grammy nominations.
Actually, that's not true.
Well, I shouldn't use that.
I make a point of setting people straight on that, actually, because
Is that in your Wikipedia thing, then?
Well, Wikipedia is notorious for having problems, but I think there are a few things in my Wikipedia that aren't true, and I need to get on that. But no, a couple of my albums were nominated for Grammys, but the nominations were not mine. They belonged to Vince Mendoza for arrangements.
So you're not part of Denmark's royal family either?
No. But I do like to set people straight about the Grammy thing because I would never want to be dishonest about that. I have not been nominated. It's something that I hope will happen one day.
I will be crossing that out when I introduce you tonight that you folks wouldn't have seen.
Well, I like to be honest.
So go JaneMonheit.com?
JaneMonheitOnline.com.
Online.com. And you can get CDs there.
Yeah.
And
tour dates as well, and yeah.
There are people that know their way how to navigate around the Great American Songbook. Some navigate and leave their presence with it, and you are one of those people. I'm so delighted that you're here.
Thank you so much.
Jane Monheit.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. That's Jazz Tonight as we begin a full year of tribute to the great Chet Baker. Talk to Tiffany Austin next week. Thanks to the folks from Willow Street for their kind sponsorships, to the good people here at KCAT. Until next week, I'm Jacobi. I'll see you soon.